In the mid-19th century, as Irish Catholic immigrants sought refuge from famine and persecution, they found a new enemy in America. His name was Lewis Charles Levin. While most nativist leaders of the time were Protestant Anglo-Saxons, Levin stood out as a Jewish immigrant son, a man from a marginalized community himself. Yet he became the architect of one of the most venomous anti-Catholic campaigns in American history. Through his lies and fiery rhetoric, Levin painted Irish Catholics as enemies of the nation, spreading wild conspiracies about their loyalty to the Pope and their supposed plans for a Catholic takeover. Levin wasn't just another voice in the crowd, he was one of the men who gave anti-Irish Catholic hatred a voice, a platform, and a violent following. This is the story of how Lewis Charles Levin became a father of Irish Catholic hate in America. Lewis Charles Levin, born in Charleston, South Carolina, in 1808 to Jewish immigrants from England, carried himself with a mix of ambition and opportunism that foreshadowed his controversial future. A bright but restless individual, Levin graduated from South Carolina College in 1828. His early career was a patchwork of mediocrity, starting as a clerk in a dry goods store in Charleston before dabbling in teaching in Cincinnati, Ohio. His temper and lack of restraint led to a duel in Woodville, Mississippi, that left him wounded and scrambling to flee town in disgrace. He bounced between Vicksburg, Mississippi, Nashville, Tennessee, and Baltimore, Maryland, seemingly searching for a purpose. Reinventing himself as L.C. Levin, Esq., he adopted the airs of a lawyer despite no clear evidence he ever received legal training or passed the bar. Yet despite, or perhaps because of his dubious qualifications, Levin managed to carve out a role in American history, leaving a legacy as contentious as the man himself. A Jewish man who never hid his heritage, Levin built his entire political career by aligning himself with and leading Protestant nativists, leveraging their values while privately rejecting their core beliefs, such as the virgin birth and the divinity of Jesus. Levin publicly supported Protestantism not out of conviction but as a tool to gain power, using it to scapegoat and demonize Catholics, particularly Irish Catholics. He had no issue with immigrants as long as they weren't Catholic, courting the support of non-Catholic immigrants to fuel his crusade. His hatred wasn't about protecting Native Americans but about specifically targeting one group to climb the political ladder. By 1838, Lewis Charles Levin had found his way to Philadelphia, where he discovered his true calling, whipping up moral panics. He began by railing against alcohol, delivering sanctimonious lectures, and founding the Temperance Advocate and Literary Repository. He organized a theatrical bonfire of booze in 1842, aimed at drawing attention to his campaign against pubs and taverns. But Levin's anti-alcohol crusade was merely the appetizer for the deadly feast to come. Smelling political opportunity, he pivoted to an anti-Catholic crusade, using his position as editor of the Daily Sun to peddle paranoia and conspiracy theories. As a shrewd opportunist, Levin patiently waited for the perfect issue to exploit, and he found it in 1843. A seemingly minor public school ruling, which allowed Catholic children to opt out of Protestant Bible readings, became the spark he needed to ignite a full-scale cultural war. Levin weaponized the ruling to stoke fears among Protestant Americans, painting it as a grave threat to their values and way of life. He framed the decision not as a matter of religious fairness, but as a dangerous concession to Catholic power, warning that it was the first step in a grand papal conspiracy to undermine American institutions. Levin masterfully amplified the issue through speeches, editorials in the Daily Sun, and public rallies, turning what should have been a local school policy into a nationwide rallying cry for Protestant nativists. By casting himself as the defender of Protestant virtue, he galvanized support for his new political vehicle, the American Republican Party, later rebranded the Native American Party. The party capitalized on the growing fear and resentment he had cultivated, presenting itself as the last line of defense against an imagined Catholic takeover. Levin's strategy was simple but devastating. Take a small, reasonable compromise, twist it into a symbol of existential threat, and use it to unify disparate groups under his banner. The ruling became his weapon of choice, a means to consolidate power by scapegoating Catholics and manipulating public sentiment. Through this campaign, Levin established himself as the chief spokesman for anti-Catholic nativism, his calculated outrage reshaping the political landscape and leaving a trail of division in its wake. Levin's next target was Daniel O'Connell, the Irish statesman leading the Repeal Association, which aimed to undo the Act of Union between Ireland and Britain. Seizing on O'Connell's efforts to establish repeal clubs among Irish immigrants in America, Levin concocted an outlandish conspiracy theory. He declared these clubs to be nothing less than beachheads for a Vatican invasion, with O'Connell as the mastermind and the Pope as the would-be conqueror of Protestant America. In Levin's fevered imagination, every Irish Catholic immigrant was a covert Vatican agent, smuggling papal influence into the very heart of American democracy. Levin's warnings reached absurd heights. He portrayed the repeal clubs as sleeper cells, training grounds for a mythical Catholic uprising that would topple the Republic and install the Pope as supreme ruler. The idea of Irish immigrants, most of whom were impoverished and barely scraping by, orchestrating a papal coup d'etat was patently ridiculous. Yet Levin's theatrical rhetoric and relentless fear-mongering gave these delusions a veneer of legitimacy, stirring up Protestant anxieties and turning Irish Catholics into the ultimate scapegoats. While Levin's claims bordered on farce, the consequences were anything but amusing. By turning O'Connell's repeal clubs into symbols of Catholic subversion, Levin incited real hatred and violence. What should have been dismissed as paranoid drivel was instead embraced by an increasingly nativist audience, proving that even the most ridiculous lies can take root in fertile soil. The disaster unfolded on May 3, 1844, when Levin and his nativist cronies attempted to hold a rally in Kensington, an Irish Catholic stronghold. Chased out by enraged locals, Levin returned days later with 3,000 rioters in tow, setting off a bloody melee that left bodies in the streets, homes reduced to ash, and Catholic churches, St. Michael's and St. Augustine's, burned to the ground. Not content with the destruction in May, Levin's rhetoric stirred fresh riots in July, this time threatening St. Philip Neri Catholic Church. The mob, drunk on nativist vitriol, prepared to raze the church, but Levin, perhaps realizing he had gone too far, intervened to stop them, a rare flicker of self-awareness from a man otherwise devoid of it. The July riots earned Levin and his ally, Samuel R. Kramer, charges of exciting to riot and treason. Yet, as often happens with men skilled in pandering to public fears, the charges never stuck. Levin emerged unscathed, leaving behind a trail of ashes, blood and broken lives. He was a charlatan par excellence, a man whose only true conviction was his belief in his own entitlement to power, no matter the cost. This fear-mongering wasn't just rhetoric, it was the foundation of a violent movement that would terrorize Irish Catholic communities for years to come. Shortly after the blood-soaked 1844 Philadelphia riots, events he had helped incite, Lewis Charles Levin seized his opportunity to climb the political ladder. Running for Congress on a blatantly nativist platform, he championed extending the naturalization period to 21 years, barring anyone not native-born from holding office, and rejecting any form of foreign influence in American society, religion or politics. Astonishingly, he became the first Jewish member of the United States House of Representatives, a bitter irony given his party's fixation on exclusion and prejudice. Levin was re-elected in 1846 and 1848, serving as chairman of the United States House Committee on Engraving during his final term, a role as mundane as his rhetoric was incendiary. As a congressman, Levin railed against Irish Catholic immigrants, accusing them of being drunkards, criminals, and un-American. Yet his nativist policies conveniently excluded non-Catholic immigrants, proving that his hatred was not about preserving American values, but about targeting one specific group. Levin's speeches institutionalized the fear and hatred of Irish Catholics, turning it into a political movement that shaped the nation's immigration policies for decades. After leaving Congress in 1851, he threw himself into furthering the Know Nothing movement, campaigning for US Senate, a seat then elected by state legislatures. His ambition led to accusations of bribery, landing him in the crosshairs of a Pennsylvania state investigation in 1855, though no charges were filed. Levin's influence extended beyond Pennsylvania. In the 1852 presidential election, he and other nativists helped tip the scales in favor of Democrat Franklin Pierce, smearing Whig candidate General Winfield Scott with accusations of papist connections due to Catholics in his family. Levin continued to stoke anti-Catholic fervor as a prominent speaker at the first Know Nothing Party convention in 1855. By 1856, Levin's nativist zeal collided with the rise of the Republican Party. Furious over their nomination of John C. Fremont, he penned a venomous screed denouncing Fremont, which he delivered at a rally in Philadelphia's National Hall. However, his tirade was cut short when Fremont forcibly removed him from the stage. Despite his declining health, Levin remained a central figure in the Know Nothing movement. Levin's career ended as chaotically as it began. By the 1850s, his health deteriorated, and he suffered a complete mental collapse. He was committed to the Philadelphia Hospital for the Insane after becoming violent and unmanageable, with some speculating that opium abuse had played a role. Levin died in 1860, a broken man, but his legacy lived on. The hatred he cultivated would continue to plague Irish Catholics in America long after his name was forgotten. Lewis Charles Levin's impact on American history is both undeniable and deeply shameful. He didn't simply participate in anti-Irish Catholic sentiment, he weaponized it. His fabricated beachhead conspiracy and incendiary speeches turned Irish Catholic immigrants into scapegoats for the fears and anxieties of Protestant America. Levin's paradoxical identity as a Jewish nativist highlights the depths of his opportunism. How does a man from a marginalized group become the face of a movement that excludes others? Historian Stephen Waldman once wrote that Levin proved being part of a persecuted group does not necessarily bring sensitivity to the plight of other religious minorities. Levin's life is a chilling reminder of how prejudice, once unleashed, can be wielded by anyone, regardless of their own background. His story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of hate and the people who exploit it. What do you think about Lewis Charles Levin's legacy? Was he a product of his time or a cynical opportunist who set dangerous precedents? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more stories about the darker chapters of history.